Hi, I'm Mark and I'm the founder of Royal Texan Homes, and I wanted to spend a little bit of time today talking about, I'm in the Winchester model here at Republic Grand Ranch, Willis, Texas. And I wanted just to talk to you a little bit about the thinking when I'm looking at a living room space, dining room space, how we create those, and kind of the flow and the functionality as well as the aesthetic that goes into the thinking behind it. So point number one is I started this plan with the concept of a balance point. As you probably know, I was in England in 2018 and visiting various cathedrals. We went over to France for a day and visited some there in some Marlow places. And I was just really connected to the concept of this kind of cross that existed as these cathedrals were built around the idea of Christendom. And I really liked that as a balance point as well. So I wanted to create a home that was based around a similar balance point. And I didn't know how to do it without having these kind of cross-shaped homes. And so what I thought I could do to create something that would work in a residential setting is to create these kind of sight lines that exist and the balance point that exists underneath those. And so those balance points are right here underneath this dining table. And so from this dining table, the idea is that anywhere you sit, like if I sit here, I've got a view. So the sight lines exist. You have this range and this hood that sits over this moment of drama that balances with the fireplace. And then you have the sight line out and out. Whether this is a door or a window doesn't much matter. But because you live on land, you have this tremendous sight line out of the front of your home as well. And it really changes your thinking. When you live on land, all of a sudden, your front is as usable because it still has so much privacy, almost as the back. And so this is the balance point. So if I sit here, that's what I see. If I sit here, I have the sight line going from fireplace to vent and a beautiful view out here. Then if I sit here, I have the same thing. I have this fireplace, this gorgeous living room, and the sight lines that run either way. Again, whether this is a door or a window, doesn't matter. The aspect is still the same. So that was kind of the balance point for the home. And then within that, I really like symmetry. I try to use symmetry wherever possible. Not that I'm handcuffed or bound by that, not that that's the only way I can think, but when you look at the poles, the buildings that are the most popular repeatedly, time and time again, the thing that wins is symmetry. So then it's a question of going back to kind of like the golden ratio and things like that and thinking, what are the dimensions that work within that as well? You know, everyone from Leonardo da Vinci through to Andrea Palladio. These are all people that worked with these kinds of mathematical Fibonacci-driven principles. And so with us, what we wanted to do was always try and incorporate that ratio together and that symmetry. So with the living room, and I'm going to wander over to the living room for a second. With the living room, you can see this kind of symmetry. And remember, it's not as clinical as I'm making it sound, because there's a feel, there's an emotion that comes with what we talk about when we lead with design, right? Which is historically inspired, designed for modern living. So I wanted something to feel like it was an English cottage, English manor house. But, you know, if it was built 300 years ago, obviously the ceilings would be much lower and the doors would be much lower. So it's designed for modern living. So everything is raised. We're incorporating as much natural light as we can. The centerpiece is obviously this massive fireplace, but the fireplace should not dominate this space. And so we use a lot of the same dimensions, whether it's in a large 4,600 square foot home like this, or in one of our smaller Stratford models, which is 2,200 square feet off the top of my head. The dimensions really in the living space don't change much at all. And I know you're thinking, how is that possible? Well, the idea is, if you're building a 3-bedroom house, or like this, a very large house with lots of other rooms, that shouldn't really massively impact the kitchen, the dining space, the living space, the primary or the owner's retreat. Those things are kind of sacrosanct, if you like. They're protected in Mark's world and in Royal Texan's world. So we try and keep those the same dimension because we want that feel. Then we have in here, obviously, we've used beams here. And we use something that people in Texas use a lot, which is kind of the cedar covered beams. The reason for that is I wanted it to feel royal, but I also wanted it to feel Texan as well. We could have gone with something much more rough hewn. We could have used beams that are, repurposed, having come out of a 100-year-old building. We could use the 5-pond beams that are really gorgeous, but we wanted to do something that was kind of an homage to where we are. And then obviously light. Light is hugely important. You have functional light. You have the light that comes down. So we have these fabulous retro cans, right? So the retro kits that we put in our recess cans, we don't do things like put the light discs up or anything else like that. We don't do the cheap things. We do the quality finishing. So you have a full-blown recess can. And in this living space, we've got the space for 6 of them. And then we come back and do the retro LED fitting on top of them, which gives them this really elegant look and this lovely soft finish. And when you turn them off, they turn off. When you turn them on, they turn on. They don't just go on, off, on, off. And it's not as stark, but it gives the lumens to the room. So you have this kind of this functionality of light, and it blends with the natural light. Because here, because of the aspects that we have, where the sun rises and where the sun sets, I was not afraid to have this wall of windows here without coverage, because we have no direct sunlight ever into this living room. So that natural light can come through, but beware if you're building this in an aspect of like if this was a south facing rear yard, you'd want to be careful of that, because then these things would start pulling a lot of the radiant heat in. So we talk to our clients a lot about that when we're designing their home as well. So then you have the accent lighting and the mood lighting, and then you have these reflective surfaces and the way that we've decorated. If you do, just to use silly examples, if you do a black wall, it's going to hold and deplete probably 90% of the light and it's going to reflect like 10% off of it, as opposed to a white wall where it's the opposite. It will reflect like 90% off of it. So the lighter and the brighter that we can give, regardless of color palette, whether you're warm or cool, using that to be able to drive and reflect light around this space is hugely important. And then electrical lighting becomes much more of an accent than it does as a necessity during the day. You don't have to turn it on. In fact, in my house, I rarely turn any lights on during the day because it's so enjoyable just to enjoy the natural light that comes through and just have that reflect around the space, and to see the differences it makes as the day goes on to how you enjoy the room. It's really very interesting. Anyway, the other things in this living room, obviously there are things that we do that are just things that we do. So we do very, very high baseboards. We do the Cora screwless plates. So you see on this kind of 110 outlet that's down here, or 120 outlet, I guess. And then over here, also the light switches. You can see here, there's no screws in place, which is really useful. But also it's just a really nice look. It's a bit like the recess cans. There's a cheaper way to do it, but we don't. Why? Because this just adds to the look and the feel. And I want you to get that. What's the date today? 4th of August, 2023. Where's the time gone? I want you to get that naturally. When you engage with us and you live in a Royal Texan home, I want you to feel this incredible aesthetic that comes with it. You're not having to upgrade your switches or your plugs. You're not having to upgrade your light fixtures. It's something that we want you to have. We want you to live in a Royal Texan home. We talk a lot about you know, the inspiration. We talk a lot about the passion. We talk about the feelings. We talk about living with it, and elements of all of those areas kind of collide into each other. And so here, when you're living in this space, just that understated elegance is what I want you to have. You know, we have 12-foot ceilings here, and in this home, I believe right now, there's no additional cost to having a 12-foot ceiling. You wouldn't get this historically, but this is historically inspired. It's not a recreation of an English country home. So there's this kind of space and this ambiance, this negative space that sits around everything. So for example, if I come round to you over here, you can see behind this sofa's not butted up against the wall. And it allows you then to layer it in front of the windows, as opposed to being pushed up, because you have what they call negative space. Negative space is an actual positive. You want to use that. That's why we use these dimensions. You know, our homes are built to feel spacious, to engage people at a kind of psychological level, where they're able just to feel as well as experience and use their home. It's more than just a photograph. It's more than just fitting a certain amount of people into a room. Anyway, what else have I done here? I've done, you know, cased openings here. I've done these beams. Obviously, we've, you know, you've got your low volt, your speakers in the ceiling, which, you know, we have a standard low volt package that encompasses that. But that's kind of the thinking behind it. And we'd love to talk to you about your space, because your living space is very, very important. Whether, like me, you don't have a TV in your living space, you have a separate room for a TV. And so your living space is a place where you can come and just rest, you know, just rest. I just want to be able to sit and rest. I want to be able to talk to people. I want to be able to read, you know, I don't want it to be dominated by one thing. And the model home's kind of similar to that. Or whether you want to kind of engage with a TV in the space, or with music in the space, or with people in the kitchen, if you want it to be more social, whatever that is, I want to capture that. That's the essence. Like, yes, we have plans to start with, but what we're really interested in doing is taking the inspiration, historically inspired, but also inspired by you. Every house we create, we want it to be built around you. That is the essence of the vision of Royal Texan Homes. And that is a quick walk around this living space. So I guess I will see you next time I see you. All right, have a great Friday.